Hello musicians, Buckydurddle here. Welcome back. We're doing another video tutorial today on the VCV Rack modular synthesis DAW. Specifically, we're doing a part 2 on a series on the Dexter module. This is by Valley. So Dexter is a synthesis module. It's an oscillator. It's a sound producer, but it's very complex. It has a lot of things we can do. It's a synthesizer. It's an FM synth. It's a frequency modulation synth. It's a phase modulation synthesizer and has a lot of wavetable synthesis components in it as well. So there is a lot to do in the Dexter synthesizer, the Dexter module. So this is part 2 on how it works. Now, before I get into the learning here today, I'm going to go over a couple of things of what we're going to cover. Now, a review quickly. Last time I met with you, we covered the 4 operators. We have 4 operators here, or we can call them oscillators, but in FM synthesis, we generally call them operators. So we have 4 operators we went over, and we talked about how some of these controls work, including wave, shape, level, coarse, and fine. You can refer back to that other tutorial, number 1, part 1 of this Dexter series, to see more about it. Okay, now let's have a look at what we're going to do today. That is, we are going to be covering Wavetable. And I'm going to show you how to manipulate the Wavetable tables so that you can have full selection of every sound that Dexter can provide you for doing your other synthesis projects. Okay, we're going to cover all these things today, and maybe a few other things too, other little things as we go along. Okay, let's get started. First thing is we have 4 operators, as we talked about in our last tutorial. And every one of these operators has the ability to produce a library of wavetable synthesis sounds. I'm going to show you that very quickly first, what that is, where it is, and then for one operator, and then we're going to get into what it is. So I clicked up here in the settings. Every operator has a settings button up in the top left. You can see it here for number 2, operator 3, and operator 4. So I'm going to go to operator 1. And you'll notice we have a dial here. The dial's table, and this lets us rotate through a whole load of presets, a whole load of sounds. You're not hearing anything right now. I've got our volume turned down over here in my mixer. But we have a lot of sounds we can choose from. These are the wavetable sounds. These are tables. So we're going to talk more about how to manipulate those shortly. And by the way, if you happen to see one of these other mod 1.2 or mod 3.4 selected instead of wavetable, we need to have wavetable selected right here in order to be able to see this dial and to manipulate it the way I'm doing. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now that's it for how to find where the wavetables are. Okay, next I'm going to go to a Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page is on wavetable synthesis. Now this, when you go here, this may seem complex, but in principle, what we want to understand about wavetable synthesis is that it differs from the synthesis we've seen in the past in some of the modules, like let's say VCO 1 by Fundamentals. That produces a single wave. It produces a sine wave or a triangle or a square wave or a saw wave and variations on that. And we have other modules that we've seen as well. It basically use the same sort of idea, where you have a wave, and then the oscillator will respond to the voltage input from another controller, LFO or a keyboard or sequencer, and it will take that wave that you've created, sine wave or saw wave, and it will change the pitch. It will change the frequency of the wave, and then it will give you a sound. So if you wanted to play an A, you choose an A based on the voltage, and if you have a saw wave selected, it will create a saw wave A. Well, wavetable synthesis is a little more complex. What happens in wavetable synthesis is you have a preset. Let's say if you have preset number 1. Preset number 1 doesn't have one wave. It has a series of waves. So it may have a sine wave, but it may have other waves in the table as well. You can morph smoothly between all the waves, depending on what you need. So rather than just having a sine wave only you can choose from, you may have a wave that as you move through the table, you can, using something like a controller, like a dial or an LFO or another sort of controller, like a modulation wheel or or pressure sensitivity on your keyboard, you can change, you can modulate from one wave shape to the next wave, all within one table. So the idea of this is that there are certain times in your music you may want to move between these waves and get variations on the waves based on what your needs are. So you're not stuck with one wave. Okay, so let's have a look at how that actually, how that works in here. I'm going to turn up our volume a little so you can hear what we're doing here. I'm sorry for moving around a little, but I'm zoomed in quite a bit here. Okay, so now we have a wave. Let's go, I have a sound. Let's go to operator 1. Let's have a look at, we're going to make sure we have our wavetable available to us, and our wavetable is selected here with the little red dot right here. Now I can choose different wavetables. So I'm going to stick to the first one, Opal. Okay. Our wave selector here, this lets us morph across the wavetable, the Opal wavetable. And as I go through the dial, you'll see on scope on my right hand side, you'll see that wave change. You see that it's changing? Okay, and I'm going to go back to the beginning again. Now I'm going to turn my volume, I'm going to turn my pitch down a little, so maybe we can have a bit better look at that. See that I'm going through the wave, it's changed already. Changing again, you can see that's morphing through different wave shapes. So that wave table, it was all of those waves, all the parameters that created these waves, and I can smoothly move throughout each one of these. So that's one preset, that's just one. So Opal contains all of those waves. So I can move between each one of these if I wanted. And I may choose that depending on an LFO setting or a pitch setting or any other type of variable. I can control where I am in the wavetable itself. I can choose that, choose where I am based on whatever the variable I want to provide it. Maybe it's a sequencer trigger, or maybe it's a voltage from an input like an LFO. It could be anything. But for now, I'm not going to demonstrate that now. I'm just going to talk to you about wavetable and what the wavetables are themselves, what it is and how it works. Now I'm at the beginning of, I'm at the far left, rotated counterclockwise on my wave dial, and you can see on scope here I have a certain type of shape. Now if I rotate through that, you can see the shape changing. Now the frequency stays the same. It has some different overtones, but it stays basically, the foundation pitch is the same. Now, if I'm using that wavetable is meant to sound like saxophone. So if I go back to my sequencer now, I'm going to held my sequencer up, and let's hear that. I'm gonna bring this up. Now, this is meant to emulate a saxophone sound. You may say to yourself, "Oh, it doesn't really sound like exactly like a saxophone." Well, yeah, that's okay. But this is synthesis. It's not. If I wanted to record a saxophone here and have the exact saxophone, I would do that. And there's other ways of doing that with samplers and things. But this is synthesis. So the wavetable that you're hearing here, this sax wavetable, is a series of sounds that have been created to emulate the sound of a saxophone. Very rudimentary. But let's turn up our volume again and have a quick listen. Now, the reason why I'm demonstrating this saxophone sound is because the idea with wavetable synthesis was that as you have different needs in your music for different timbres of saxophone sound, you would be able to go through the saxophone wavetable and find various timbres, all based on the saxophone sound. So it wouldn't just be, oh, well, one thing sounds like saxophone, and one part of the table sounds like a bird, and another part of the table sounds like a chainsaw. No, the idea was that these sounds, these timbres that occur in that single table would all have a roughly a similar sort of timbre, so that as the musician is using the table, they're able to morph between the waves and find sounds that are maybe useful in what they need. So if it's a high register, they may be choosing one part of the wavetable. A low register, low frequencies, maybe they'll try a different part of the table, and they'll be able to get different results based on where they are within the table. Okay, again, if we turn up the volume a little bit, let's try a different table. If we go to another instrument table, like let's say cello, I'm going to lower my register down. And if I go through the wave, this sound, they're not really different across the whole wave, but the fact is that they do all have a characteristic timbre that is the cello. Now if I disconnect my sequencer, and I'll adjust my time here to see if I can get you a better look at the wave. Maybe not. That might be a difficult one to see. I'm trying to get it to stay still on scope, and that can be sometimes tricky. There we go. That's a better one. Okay, so now if I move through the wave, you can see the wave changes. Now this is a very complex wave. As you can see, it changes, but it is still the timbre of it is the cello timbre. Okay, so you can see that's the and historically that's the reason why we did that. We did that so that the musicians would have the opportunity to create music using one table, but having various different timbres for the same instrument patch. So if they're using a cello, they maybe go to one part of the table and find a certain timbre, go to another part of the table, find another timbre, but they would be based on the cello. Okay, sometimes we don't always do that. If I go back to my wavetable selector again, and again I click my operator, my top left, and I can go to, again, any of these I want to do here. We'll go to, let's try this one, saw harm. Oh, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. It's sine harm. I'm going to do this one. Okay, TX. All right, so now let's have a look at that one. So right now, it's right off the start. It looks like a sine wave on our scope. We can see it's a sine wave. Now let's move through the wave table. We're morphing through triangle now. You can see it goes through unipolar and bipolar. See, so we're getting some very different, very interesting variations on that. And let's change my pitch a little. And see if this may help us see the wave a little better. So you can see that this gives us some interesting sounds and visuals too, but we're of course more interested in the sound. But it gives us some changes based on, it seems to be all based around triangle and sine waves. So we have the ability with this one to stick to, again, a very similar sort of timbres and have the ability to move through those nice and smoothly with the wave change. But we are still within one wavetable. Okay, now let's go back again. Let's try another one. Let's try, go to add square. Okay, now let's see what add square does for us. Now you can see it starts off with a sine wave, and then we do a little bit of a fold at the top here, and we do more folds that adds in more harmonics, more of our overtones. and it emulates a square wave. So it's almost it looks very close to a square wave at the end. And if we hook up our sequencer to it again, you'll hear a very square wave sounding sequence. Whoopsie daisy, sorry about that, I missed. So you can hear it's very distinctive square wave, and it's not a pure square wave, but it's very distinctive. Now, another thing I'm going to show you now, and this applies to all of these waves, is this shape does a pulse width modulation. This is what it does. Quite simple. Okay, so now I'm going to disconnect our. There we go. So now, if I go back to our wave again, you see it goes back to our sine wave. Very simple in what that wavetable does, but instead of providing us with one single wave, it provides us with a series of waves that's based on the same timbre or timbre family, or it has some sort of theme, and then it allows us to morph between these so that we have the opportunity to really explore the timbres that are associated with these themes. And again, this one here starts off with a sine wave and goes to what seems to be pretty close to a square. Let's have another look at a couple more here, just to see. I'm going to go to sweep harmony. Well, I don't know if that's exactly what they mean by it. Now, this is one I wanted to show you because, again, this is a kind of wave where there's a theme. You wouldn't be able to say this is a specific wave, but it goes through a certain process and by using overtones or harmonics. So right now we start off and we got a funny looking wave that's based on somewhat of a sine wave, but it's a variation on it. And let's just go through our wave table, sweep through it. So you can see what it does. Okay, now let's go back. I'm going to change my pitch because I want to be able to show you this one. I'm going to lower it down a lot, so you need to really see this one clearly. It's still not going to work for us. Usually with this is trial and error, and I've done this many times, but it's a trial and error to be able to catch the pitch on the scope so that it will give you a nice clear view. It's a sweet spot we need to hit. Okay, let's see if that works for us here. Okay, so now if I go all the way to the beginning of the waveform, you can see the waveform we have. Sorry about that. Sorry about the movement. Now if I start rotating up through the wave, and I'm moving through the wave table, you can see what's happening. The way that they've engineered the shape of the wave, they're adding more overtones, and the main overtone here, the main frequency, is the loudest. This amplitude is the highest, but then the other overtones, they get smaller, so there's less sound from them. We add more and more. You can see what it's doing, and now it's almost turning into a different sort of shape of wave, like a different sort, almost like a saw. So you can see what it's doing, but this isn't something where we're trying to emulate an oboe or we're trying to emulate a flute. They're playing with a specific theme. You can see what they're doing here. You can see what they've done with how they engineered that wave shape, and they're allowing us moving through the wave table to morph through the evolution of those shapes. So there you go. That's basically, in a nutshell, that's basically how wavetable is meant to work. So you're not just provided with a wave, you're provided with various waves that can be morphs between. And sometimes there may be 7 or 8 or more variations on the wave, and we are able to move through those in a smooth fashion. Now you can control these by using LFOs. I'm not going to hook one up today to show you, but I'm going to just show you how it is done, and then we'll see how it's done, and we'll do it in a future video. So what we do here is we're back into our wavetable. If we click on mod 1, 2, you click on this right here, and you can have wave position and wave bank. Okay. So, and we also have our shape button here. So these are 3. These would control. Oops, sorry about that. This would control our wavetable. Okay, the bank. And this would control the position within the wavetable, the wave position. And of course, this is our shape, which is pulse width modulation. And then what you would do, what happens with this, if I go back again and I go over to, oopsie daisy, I go into mod 1 and 2. And if I was to choose wave position and get back out of it, that means that this guy right here now controls that. That's where my LFO would go into, would be this. Okay, I'll show you more about that in another video, because I'm going to talk in another video about how to control all of these parameters. Okay, so let's just recap really quickly here. Wavetable synthesis is not one single wave like a sine wave or triangle. No, it's a series of waves. It's a series of sounds that are generally based on a theme or based on a timbre set, something behind the basis of what the waves are. And we can then morph between all the variations of these waves that are contained in that wave table. So you can go from the beginning to the end. And we saw where we can be in an oboe and or saxophone, and we can morph between all the various timbres of that saxophone wave table. We can also variate through if there's different waves like a saw wave, sine wave, triangle, square. We could morph through all of those in very smoothly morphing between those. So there's almost an infinite variation of sounds as you morph smoothly through all of those types of waveforms contained in the single wave table or wavetable bank. Okay. So that's basically it, and I showed you how to find that in here and how you can move through the bank, move through the wave table itself using the wave dial here. And every one of these operators has a wave table, has the same thing. So we have it here on number 2 and number 3. They all have it the same thing. Then what we're going to learn later is about how to use those waves, those wave tables, to modulate each other. I'll show you that in a future tutorial as well. So that's basically it. Now, we covered a lot of material today. I hope it's not overwhelming. But if you do have any questions, if there's anything you need some more clarification on, I'll be happy to go through with you. Feel free to touch base with me in the utopian.io Discord, or you can get me here in the comments of this post. I'll be happy to get back to you. I also love to hear how you're using Dexter or some of these other modules to make your music. Get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.